Everybody, I thought I would take an opportunity after seeing some questions about just tarot cards and tarot reading in general, that I would do a little short tarot lesson. And this is just from me and my spirit, I guess you could say, and my view and my opinion on how I read cards. And take it with a grain of salt. If it resonates with you, great. If not, just, ignore it. So here's how I do it. And I'm going to use the reading that I did yesterday on Is Trump Relevant, Still Relevant or Relevant, to explain more in depth how I read the cards. So the very first card that I pulled was an oracle card. And as to the question, is Trump relevant, I got within the next few months. Now, within the next few months is a timing card. It didn't answer my yes or no question. And there are cards in this deck, and this is the Angel Answers deck. This is the Angel Answers deck. There are timing cards in here, and they're these dark purple ones with the dark purple edges. See, there's a no, and there's a yes. So it didn't really answer my question. So that told me right away that there was something more important that Spirit wanted me to know, other than just a straight yes or no. Spirit wanted me to go into more detail by not answering my question directly. Now, again, this is my opinion on how I receive messages. So that told me that there was some event in which Trump would be relevant, because this is to me leans positive. Within the next few months, leans positive. And again, it depends on the question you're asking. So I took this to mean that something was going to happen in the next few months. So then I decided to read further and to pull some cards on what it was that was going to happen in the next, well, actually what I said is, what is he going to say or do in the next few months? So the first card I got was the Judgment card. The Judgment card. The Judgment card can be about redemption. It can be a positive card. Every tarot card has a multitude of meanings. It's kind of like a picture is worth 1,000 words. And that's what these are. These are pictures. They're metaphors. They're descriptions of meanings. I mean, you do have the word judgment, and then you have the picture. And let me just qualify how I read a little bit too. I learned the traditional meanings of the cards. I have studied the traditional meanings, and I intend to keep up with that. And I haven't had time, but I very much intend to continue to learn the traditional meanings. But you don't have to. You don't have to learn the traditional meanings. You can throw away all the books to any card deck you get and just go by what you feel when you see the word judgment and you see this image. But I will warn you, if you do that, if you go strictly by your own guides, which is perfectly okay in my book, and then you do something like I've done, which is to start a YouTube channel, you will get criticized, because there are people out there that don't like that. They don't like people going their own way, doing their own thing, but that's their opinion. But you have to be prepared for that. If you don't stick with the traditional meanings and you go your own way, you will get criticized. But that doesn't, in my opinion, take away from the validity of what messages you get, because your guides speak to you through your cards and tell you the answers. So, and if you'll notice, and this deck right here is a very traditional deck. In fact, this is actually a copy of one of the very first tarot decks. And this is made by Make Playing Cards. It's called the Study Deck. So it's this particular card and deck is about as traditional as you can get. So, but there are many other tarot decks that are not traditional at all. So, I mean, especially if you're using a non-traditional deck, like, let's see, like say this deck is fairly traditional, but it's not completely traditional. This is the Kaleidodope Tarot deck mixed with the 2020 Visions Tarot. That just, I mean, that's me saying you have every right to go off the path of traditional meanings. I mean, that's a personal choice, but just be prepared. Anytime you try to do something unique or individual, you have to be prepared for people not liking that. So anyway, but I tend to in general stick with the traditional meanings, but I will listen to Spirit. I listen to what Spirit tells me to say. I would listen to the messages that I get. And so sometimes they are not the standard traditional meaning. But anyway, back to this. So this is the Judgment card. It can be a good card, like I was saying. It can be about redemption, but it's also about looking back at your past so that you can release it. It's about looking back at your past. It also can mean being judged. It can be a wake-up call. A call to wake up, a call to be kind of renewed, released from your past. This is definitely an image to me of somebody being released from their past. Now, so when I first pulled this, I'm thinking, okay, so Trump is going to be judged possibly in some way. And let's go back to the original question. The original question, it was, is Trump relevant, still relevant? Now that's relevant to us, to me, to Americans, to the whole world. And sometimes, I will say, sometimes Spirit answers me, like what I think. So this is telling us that there's going to be a reflection back on Trump's past. Now, the next card I got was the Five of Pentacles, which is about loss, being left out in the cold, hardship. It can directly mean a loss of money. And because this card is next to this card, and that's the other thing, a card on its own, if you just pull one card, then you just have that one card to work with, so you have to go with the meanings that are within that card. But as soon as you start pulling out multiple cards, more than one, the cards, especially the closer the card is to the other card, the more those meanings go together. So this, combined with this, is saying that this is a reflection back on Trump's past. This is a negative, can be a negative card, is a negative card. But not always. But again, this is to me, because of the question I asked, because they're next to each other, this is saying that there will be a reflection on his past, and it will cause, that reflection on his past is going to cause him this hardship. So there is some sort of a reflection on his past actions, on what he's done, and it's going to cause this hardship for him. That's how I'm reading this card, that these two go together. So then this card, the Four of Wands, again, now we have three cards here. So now I'm reading this as an entire message with all three cards. And so what this is telling me is that the relevancy to us is that these negative consequences that I see here are going to establish some sort of new foundation, new way of being almost, for us as a nation going forward, or maybe just the presidency, because we are talking about his most important role, which was as a president to us, to all of us. So I kind of read it like, first I read this card, then I read these two together. Then when I got this one, I read all three of them together to get the message. It's more than just reading each one. You can read each one when you're starting out and then kind of try to put them together. But I tend to get messages, the more you do this, the quicker you get messages. So I tend to get them pretty quickly now. In the beginning, I would probably read this one, then this one, and this one, and then just kind of meditate and see what Spirit was trying to tell me. Sometimes also too, a way to do this is you could read one at a time and then go back and see if something's changed. When you go back and look at them all together, sometimes the message can change when you see them all together, and it will make more sense and be more cohesive. So I hope that helps some of you out there. And don't be afraid to do your own thing, although that can be more difficult. Now, if you are going to go the route of not paying attention to the traditional meanings, I've seen recommended in some of the books I've read that you write down your interpretations, because that can help you to remember what you got from the card before. Although you can just freewheel it the entire time and just go by what you feel at the moment. But it could end up getting confusing. It can be easier to just stick with the traditional meanings, and then you can kind of springboard off of that, which is what I tend to do. It's like, now that I know the traditional meanings, I tend to kind of expand beyond that and get other messages when I'm reading the cards. So I hope that helps. I hope I didn't make things more confusing for people. And good luck.